You ever watched a TV show? The protagonist comes up with this great big plan, and then they say something to the effect of, "There's no way this plan could fail." Then a smash cut to the plan completely failing. Well, that's what we're talking about in this video. When did doing the right thing horribly backfire? Story 1. At my last retail management job, I was cashing out one of the cashiers, and her till was $300 short. On the nose. Normally, there wasn't that much cash in there, but someone had paid for a crib in cash about 20 minutes before, and since she was leaving soon, me and the store manager, decided to just let it go. So I tell her she's short, she has no idea where it is. Empties her pockets, her idea, nothing. Shows me her purse, nothing. Look in all the parts of the drawer, nothing. Look through the tape with all the transactions, nothing for no sales or anything. Just disappeared. This is where my good deed goes punished. The cash drawers have locks that could be opened, but we didn't have keys for them. I grab every random key I can find in the office and try them. Finally, with a little jimmying, a maintenance key opens the drawer. I try it a few times. Works. Show my manager, and while it doesn't find the money, it's a clue. At least we know there's a key that will open the drawers, and we can fix that, is what I'm thinking. I come in the next day, get called into the office with my boss and the store owners. I figure they want to talk about it. What I figured out. Maybe give me a medal. Nope. Fired me. For A, leaving the cash in there even though my boss said to, and B, compromising the integrity of the cash by having a key lying around. I.e., I found out how it might have happened. My manager walked me out, and his final words were, "Sorry, but we had to punish someone for something after this." This happened where I worked. I wasn't a manager, but I was the one with the most seniority. I had given 7 years of my life to this place. It was my godmother's company. Money went missing. Random girl who used to be supervisor, let's call her M, shows up out of nowhere. No one had told her to come and asks to search us. No problem, right? I mean, the supervisors who were there had already done that. Then she takes me and the other cashier, let's call her T. She tells me and T to strip. We both just look at her like, what the hell? She said to remove all clothing so she can check. We didn't want to get blamed for it, so we did. Nothing there. We're good, right? Wrong. A week later, I get called to my boss's office. Long story short, M says I did it. She said she saw me have the money but didn't want to embarrass me. In total, like $35,000 was missing over 3 or 4 instances. I started bawling. This job was my life and family, and I was being kicked out for no reason. They asked me to admit it. I said no. I even showed them my bank statements willingly and showed that I still owed $170 to my school. My godmother felt like hell. My godbrother was just ice. Told me I had to leave and couldn't work there again. Said bye to everyone and left. M quit 3 weeks later and went on an impromptu trip to Greece for 3 weeks. Every time I see her, I want to absolutely rip her hair out. I was going through enough junk without her taking my support system from me. I know it was her. She was the one that always checked our caches. So no one was tipped off by her trip to Greece? There was no repercussions after that? It wasn't exactly family, it was her godmother. But couldn't she have appealed to this family? I've had jobs where I've been ousted for something that seems to be out of the blue. It really sucks. I've never been good at office politics. You just feel so helpless. You're doing all the right things. You're doing your work to your best capacity. Everyone tells you you're doing a good job, and then you're out for no reason at all. It feels so disempowering. Story 2. My wife and I were flying from Montreal to Vienna 2 years ago. We were flying coach, so of course we're the last aboard. I see a lady sleeping in the waiting room at the gate. Good Samaritan that I like to think I am, I gently wake her and ask if she's going to Vienna. She says that yes, she is, so I tell her that it's final boarding. Away we go, and she gets on behind us. As we're taking our seats, she goes by us, and we smell the alcohol vapors. Oh no. Anyway, we get our seatbelts on, and they start pushing the plane out to the taxiway. The flight attendants go through the cabin checking seatbelts. But when they get to drunk lady, they can't wake her up. So overcome all the flight attendants, shaking her, trying to wake her up. Finally, they start calling for a doctor on the flight. Someone speaks up and is a nurse. They try and fail. So back the plane goes to the gate. On come the EMS and haul her out. 2 hours later, we're sitting at the gate while they try to find her luggage to pull off the flight. I sank deep into my seat and hoped like hell no one saw me wake her up to get on the flight. Too long didn't read? Woke up a woman who was going to miss her flight, got the flight delayed by almost 3 hours when they couldn't wake her up for pre-flight check. Edit. Location names. Oh my God, that's a terrible and cruel reaction. I'm really sorry you had to go through that. Not only did she betray a safe place to go to, she needlessly humiliated you for something she wasn't sure of. I hope you're doing okay. When our mother found out that I was intimately active by seeing my birth control packets, she made a huge deal about it, announced it to the whole family, including my dad, who was very sad and disappointed, and initially embarrassed the hell out of me. Thank you. I'm sorry you had to experience that as well. I thought I was being responsible by being on birth control, and yes, we did use condoms until we figured out that my V-spot just does not like latex. And while I see her concern, even the physician told me they wanted to do another test to make sure, because they oftentimes get false positives for HPV. She made it out like I was a party girl who slept around in a very, very subtle way, because having intimacy with one person unprotected is like having intimacy with anyone they've had intimacy with, and anyone that person had intimacy with. It was just a big, assuming cluster mess that really let me down and made me realize that parents are not God. Parents are human like I'm human, and they make mistakes that will mess you up because they're full of good intentions. I just haven't found out how to tell them that in a way that doesn't make them feel like they did wrong by me. They didn't. They just sometimes let me down. I think a couple of stories got mixed up here. We went from someone that couldn't wake up from being drunk on a plane to a woman getting embarrassed by their parents for having birth control pills. Maybe the original story from that second one will show up later on. But that is embarrassing. That line of, if you've been intimate with someone, you've been intimate with everyone they've been intimate with, and so on, was very big in the 80s. That line took place during the AIDS epidemic. It was a line that was used to try and get people to have some form of restraint. Story 3. My best friend was going through a messy breakup with his girlfriend. She was ticked, so she stole a bunch of his clothes and his cat and drove off to her apartment. We jumped into my car and gave chase. She pulled into her apartment complex and parked before realizing we were behind her, so I pulled up behind her and blocked her car in. She started screaming at me to move my car, and I said, "Hell no," while my friend called the cops. He had had that cat for 8 years and was desperately attached to it. He had only had the girlfriend for 2 years. The cops get there, and they talk to everyone. They figure out the situation. They tell the girlfriend to return the cat and the clothes. Then an officer comes over to me and says he's considering arresting me for false imprisonment. My amazed jaw dropped. Normally, I'm super respectful and cool with the cops, but it was just too much for me to swallow. Are you kidding me right now? Not at all. You put your car behind hers, making it impossible for her to leave. You kept her there against her will, and that's a crime. She could have gotten out of the car and walked away at any time. I was only stopping her from fleeing the scene with stolen property. I stared at him sullenly, a look of "you can't be completely serious" on my face. I guess we don't have to do anything this time, but next time you shouldn't get involved in disputes like this. It's a matter for the police, and you should leave it up to us. Jeez, what an absolute mess that night was. Fun fact, you were right. General law in the U.S. Rules for false imprisonment. The direct restraint of one person of the physical liberty of another without adequate legal jurisdiction. Big Town Nursing Home Incorporated versus Newman 461 SW 2D 195. And the restatement second of torts 42, there is no liability for intentionally confining another unless the person physically restrained knows of the confinement or is harmed by it. You did not impede the physical liberty of her if she had a reasonable means to escape, and simply getting out of the car was a reasonable means. Also, you have a right to recover your property and protect it from conversion, which is what she was doing trying to steal your cat, as long as you use reasonable means in recovery, which is essentially not physically harming her. According to his story, he had plenty of legal justification since they witnessed the theft firsthand. As far as I'm concerned, the cops were being hypocrites because they first agreed with his friend and asked the girl to return the stolen cat, and then get on original person's case for false imprisonment even though they had just previously agreed she was guilty of a crime. The only thing I can think of is maybe they had to tell this guy he could have been arrested for false imprisonment because the girl could have turned around if that hadn't happened and said they were being partial to their side. Why was she being charged with stolen property while they weren't being charged for false imprisonment? Maybe they had to appear impartial. That might not be the case, but that's the only thing I can come up with right now. Story 4. I once refused to be intimate with a girl because she was, at the time, super messed up on substances, and I just didn't think it was right. She couldn't even remember who I was. I stayed the night to take care of her instead. Next day, she told all our mutual friends that I violated her. It didn't end well for me. I came close to ending up in a similar situation my last year of college. Girl I liked and who was pretty into me but had a long-distance boyfriend was over and we were hanging out having a few drinks. She turned out to be a super lightweight and got trashed ridiculously fast, passing out in the bathroom. In retrospect, this was partially my fault. I had an inhuman tolerance due to random luck/genetics/what have you and mixed my drinks strong without thinking. 10 minutes later, I knock a few times, etc., and no response, so I get worried enough to yell that if I don't hear back soon, I'm going to release the lock on the door and come in. No answer or audible sounds from inside, so I release the catch and slowly crack the door while declaring that I had to check up on her, and then I see that she's collapsed on the floor with her pants halfway up. At this stage, all I can think about is, forget this, someone is going to see this and think date violation. So I quickly made sure she was breathing regularly, and then immediately called 2 friends, one guy and one girl, over to help me deal with it. I was so glad I did, too, because when they showed up and I went to carry her into a spare bedroom to sleep it off, she woke up enough to come at me crazily, tried to pin my arms and make out with me, pleading for me to sleep with her, etc. She didn't even remember it when she woke up, but I was super glad I had a female friend there to tell her what happened rather than have her take my word on finding her passed out in the bathroom in that state. Too long didn't read? Never, ever be alone in those types of situations when at all possible. You should always have someone of either gender on standby to help you, so the fake accusations will not hold any weight. Jeez, that is messed up. Was she just a friend or someone you were interested in? Just curious as to why you decided to stay the night. Still, 110% wrong regardless. Wait, your insurance company had the power to suspend your license? Holy hell, Canada's not the magical place I thought it was. Story 5. I was in an extremely weird and once-in-a-lifetime kind of car accident where I was supposed to be not at fault. I really do not want to go into detail, but another car hit me going twice the speed limit, sending us both rolling down into a ditch. I got out through the windshield since it was shattered and was able to cut the airbag. The other car was in much, much worse shape and was on fire. I ran up to see if the driver was okay, but she was falling in and out of consciousness. Her car was upside down and the roof was caved in, pressing her into the seat. The seatbelt was tight around her and her airbag wasn't deflating. I struggled with the door and was able to get her out as the fire spread onto her. I remember passing out a little after I was able to put out the fire on her legs. Woke up in the ambulance, broken leg and concussion. EMTs said I was only able to save her from all the adrenaline coursing through my system. The police that wrote the report found her at fault and said I was a hero, but no good deed goes unpunished. She had first-degree burns on her legs and face and had super cheap old insurance. She ended up suing me and dragging me into a 4-year legal process that not only cost my insurance thousands, but had me spending money on legal fees and lost wages from constantly having to go to court. It was finally settled because somehow all she needed was to prove I was at least 1% at fault, and my insurance folded. She was awarded my full liability, $200,000, plus $25,000 that I'm on the hook for personally. I was barely able to get my car paid off, and whatever was left in my pocket for a new car had to go to her. It's been 6 years since the accident, and I still owe about $12,000, but I'm trying to avoid paying that. What? I literally cannot comprehend why so many stories on this thread involve people suing their saviors. Human greed knows no bounds. It makes me want to live alone in the wilderness. In your shoes, I would probably try to get that on the news and spread around the story, including her name as much as humanly possible. I would make it my life goal that everyone this woman knows fully understands what a disgusting excuse for a human being she is. Too bad she didn't perish. Story 6. When I was young, I was able to save money very well. No bank or anything, just a wooden box under my bed that used to hold dominoes. Every week, I would cash my paycheck, put the vast majority in the box, and keep a little pocket money for myself. When I was 18, I worked at a video store. Everyone who worked there was very good friends. One day, we were told by our boss, a really great guy named Drew, that he had come down with stomach cancer. I talked to him afterwards and was sad to hear that the store's terrible insurance was causing Drew to have to choose between treatments or paying his rent. Drew was gay and his family had disowned him, so he had no help. I thought about it for a few days and decided I would help him out. I agreed to loan him money so he could pay his rent. He would pay me back when he was able and everything would be great. I gave him $3,000 I had saved since I was 12. A little over 3, actually, but who's counting, right? Cut to 5 months later. I come to work one night to see Drew being dragged out by the police. Turns out he had a massive wacky dust problem and had been stealing from the store. He was such a good guy, I actually fought for him at work for a month or so until I saw the evidence. I also learned that he never had cancer. It was a scam he had used on several friends of his so him and his boyfriend could get high. This gave me the worst gut-wrenching feeling out of most of the others here. Sorry to hear that someone would take advantage of your kindness like that. You have to wonder if this one fits in the stories here. It didn't necessarily backfire. He just basically lost some money. This other person lied. No one came to harm because this person gave out money. It was the other person's actions that caused his downfall. It's kind of sad that this person will not be as kind as he was before. It's kind of hard to stay generous after you've been burned in a situation like that. Story 7. I was really invested in the company I worked for and loved working there. They got bought out by another company who treated employees like dirt. About a month in, we were having server issues with one of our migrated servers, and I stayed an extra 8 hours to help get it back up and running before the next workday. Then, the next day, I worked my regular 9 hours, hour lunch break, and then came back in at 10 p.m. and worked an extra 4 hours to help resolve an issue with a client in China. On the third day, I was so tired I slept through my alarm and was probably about 2 hours late. My boss had a fit telling me how unprofessional it was to show up late, and if I did it again, I would be fired. He also pulled the "I don't want to hear any of your excuses, just listen to me" rant, which I find incredibly unprofessional. I worked salary, and I wasn't compensated for any of my time. Thankfully, I no longer work there. I have a similar story. I was working for a small company that was struggling. One night, the other programmer, a friend of mine from before getting hired, stayed overnight to bust our butt for a client. We literally slept on the floor that night, then woke up and worked the whole next day. After that, I started having to stay until 11 p.m. or so. It was over an hour drive to work because of the traffic, so I had exactly 8 hours per day when I wasn't working. One day during all this, I get into work at 9:15, and my boss has the gall to say, "I'm going to need you to come in on time." Oh, you mother sucker. Karma had my back, though. He got deported for tax fraud and child neglect. I'll start worrying about what time I get here when you start worrying about what time I leave.
Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 8. A work friend of mine was going through a nasty divorce. Even though it wasn't finalized, he was seeing another woman at work on the down low. But everyone at the office had suspicions. Having dealt with divorce before, I sent him an email explaining that people were talking and he may want to be more discreet as to not exacerbate things with his divorce. He told the down low girl what I had said. She told me to mind my business. I explained over and over again that I meant well and it was nothing against her. She convinced him not to talk to me anymore, and we haven't spoken since. Too long didn't read, gave advice about divorce, lost a friend. If I was your friend, I wouldn't have told the girl that you gave me the advice. Just that, hey, people are starting to talk. I overheard them. We should lay low for a bit until the divorce is final. This protects both of us. Your once friend is kind of dumb for cutting off contact or listening to the woman to cut off contact. Either way, dude's whipped with this new chick already. He'll come back soon enough. Meanwhile, I'd suggest original person to prepare popcorn. Story 9. A friend of mine was walking down the street late at night when he saw a man lying in an alleyway. The guy looked as though he'd been really hurt and was asking for help. My friend approached him to find out how badly he'd been hurt and what he needed to do. When he did, a bunch of guys ambushed him, beat him up, and stole all his money. The whole thing had been set up just to lure him into a vulnerable situation. It's completely terrible to take advantage of someone's kindness like that. I read a story of a man driving in the middle of the night on a street surrounded by cornfields when he saw a man lying in the street ahead, not moving. He contemplated helping, but ultimately decided he should find help ahead to play it safe. He carefully drove around the body and slowly drove off. And when he looked in his rear view, he saw the body stand up and slink away into the cornfields. Most likely, there was an ambush waiting. Why not just run over the guy to make sure he's dead? It really sucks that there are people that will take advantage of kindness like that. Between getting ambushed for trying to help someone out and cops wanting to arrest you for your part in helping out someone in a dangerous situation, it feels like you can't win. In the first situation, unfortunately, the more prudent action would be to call the cops. And maybe stand aside and make sure that the cops arrive and help this person out. They'd probably find out it was all a scam. At least that way you'd stay with 911. If you got ambushed, you could have them listen to the audio. At least. Story 10. There was a guy at work who would always talk about bringing a gun to work and showing our boss he won't take it anymore, and he can understand why those people shoot up their place of employment. I told my boss about it, and after an investigation, they fired the guy. I think I did the right thing, and maybe it saved the lives of people at work, but I just found out that he unalived himself last week because of it. To be honest, it sounds like you still did the right thing. If he was willing to unalive himself, he was obviously unstable. And an unstable person talking about bringing a gun to work and shooting his boss? I would not make that gamble. You probably saved at least one life, maybe more. Possibly their own life, too. Story 11. I accidentally walked out of my local deli without paying for my soda. So being the good person that I am, I went back in to pay for it. 2 minutes later, I come back out to find that my bike had been stolen. This thread has taught me if I want to do the right thing, I need to lock up my bike first. I want to know what cities these trusting bikers live in. I learned at an early age to lock up my bike even when it's in the backyard. High school never ends. The people just get taller. Some of them don't even get taller. Story 12. In 7th grade, gave a choking girl the Heimlich maneuver, saved her life. No one else knew how. And I was suspended for 5 days for personal harassment. Her parents tried to sue, but it went nowhere. Edit. Wow. Gold. Thanks, stranger. You gotta be kidding me. Weren't there any faculty present that saw it? Or was it the girl that claimed personal harassment? The security said I was dry humping her or something. The girl was thankful. Her parents were the really upset ones. The school blew it out of proportion. Story 13. I was in the parking lot of a store one time when a lady dropped a bunch of stuff off her cart. She was having trouble picking up a box of bulk items. I told her that I would help her, and we both picked the box up and put it in the trunk of her car. She then sprayed me with pepper spray and screamed. I was left confused at why I was attacked as she almost ran me over driving out of there. Is that not assault? It is. Catching the lady would really be tough, though. Story 14. My friend in college had to unalive and dissect mice. There were too many etherized mice for the class, so they got the leftover little dude and carefully revived him, gave him water, stroked his fur, and then took him outside and released him on the lawn outside the cafeteria. Free crumbs for life. He made it several yards before a bird swooped down and grabbed him. The circle of life. Nah, you're gonna get eaten by an eagle. Story 15. Gave a one-eyed homeless guy $5. He wandered off, apparently telling other homeless guys his good fortune. Homeless guys began melting out of the scenery asking for their $5. I realized my mistake at that point and stopped being generous. They apparently turned their anger on One Eye and stabbed him for his $5. I found out when questioned by the police. Well, hell. Story 16. I offered my seat to an elderly lady in the bus. Turns out she wasn't that old and felt offended, so she screamed at me. At which point, you tell her to shove off and say, "Fine, I guess you don't deserve any courtesy," and proceed to sit back down. I would have said, "My apologies, I mistook you for a lady." Story 17. Absolutely refusing to let a drunk buddy drive his wife home. Apparently, I'm no fun anymore. It isn't safe, no matter how not drunk they think they are. Tonight, you get lucky and reach home all right. Next time, who knows? Being a killjoy is still better than being gone. Story 18. I trusted a friend who said he was clean from his substance addiction. This is one of the most disappointing things in the world. Sucks even worse when it's family.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.